As we inch closer to the longer evenings and colder temperatures of winter, our thoughts turn to family budgets and the need for an increase in home heating costs. It's almost certain that utility rates are top of mind for many, but there is a homegrown Alberta solution for this. And to talk with us more about options for less expensive electricity and natural gas, we are joined by a man who wears many hats, Trevor Lewington of Ridge Utilities in Sterling, Alberta, who's also the mayor of Sterling. Trevor, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on again.
Thanks so much for having me. Look forward to talking to you about this.
Awesome. Okay, so first off, can you maybe explain why utility rates in Alberta seem so high right now?
Yeah, there's a number of factors that are influencing utility rates. Obviously, there's some global considerations. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has destabilized global markets, creating uncertainty on the European market, which inevitably trickles over here. In Alberta, we've transitioned a number of coal-fired facilities over to renewable energy, so wind and solar, for example. And when the wind doesn't blow, of course, that creates sort of peak demands and shifts in pricing. And after the pandemic, we've seen the economy come roaring back. We've got people traveling. We've got lots of activity in the economy, and so that's actually driving demand as well. We see things like electric vehicles starting to be present on our streets, again increasing consumption. So for the next little bit, we can definitely expect a lot of volatility in pricing. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to continue to see prices for both electricity and natural gas continue to rise.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. And it seems almost like the cost was shifted from taxpayers to end users. So is this why we're seeing higher utility rates partially as well?
Well, so the previous NDP government had something called what they called a price cap. So it essentially limited rates to a maximum. The challenge, though, is that the people that generate the power were still actually getting paid what their costs were. So in effect, you had a fixed rate that you and I would pay as a consumer, but then there was a tax subsidy, essentially. The government was still paying those generators from just a different bank account, if you will. So at the end of the day, whether there's a price cap or not, we still end up paying for what it costs to generate the power. And so that how that shows up on our bill just changes depending on what government policy or programs in place.
Okay, and then is this change now costing the Alberta government any more or less than in the past?
Well, as you said, consumers are feeling the pain. We've seen build outs of transmission. So, the wires essentially that get the power to our businesses and our homes. We've seen the build out of infrastructure over the last couple of years. And so the companies that have built that infrastructure pass that along. We see that on our bill in transmission and distribution fees. We're seeing the impact of federal carbon taxes, for example, that show up on our natural gas bills. And so a lot of those costs get trickled down to the consumer, and we do see that on all of the various different lines that show up on our monthly bills.
What about inflation rates? Do you think that increasing utility costs are one of the reasons for that?
Yeah, certainly we're hearing from both consumers, residents as well as businesses that they're seeing increased costs both for natural gas and electricity. And ultimately, businesses are going to pass that along to consumers in the form of higher prices. There's only so much that a business can absorb while still maintaining their margins and paying their folks. And so we will likely see those costs pass through in the form of either a higher price or a surcharge. A lot of transportation companies, of course, are charging more for fuel. And so it's the same kind of idea for our utility companies.
Okay, now the Alberta government has been providing $50 a month for electricity and natural gas costs. So do you think that maybe there's another solution that's a best course of action for this?
Yeah, so the province acted pretty quickly, actually, by getting that energy rebate program in place, and it's now been extended to the end of the year. So on your electricity bill, if you're a homeowner or you're paying that utility bill, you will see that $50 a month. There is also some cost relief for natural gas, although that program won't kick in October. Despite the fact that we have higher prices, it's not high enough yet to trigger that program. The government's been complemented by a number of different sources for acting quickly and getting those sort of inflationary help back into the hands of consumers. Of course, there can always be improvements that are made, but the initial response, I think, has received, a reasonable amount of praise for being quick and being directly on people's bills to reduce the costs out of pocket.
Okay, Trevor, can you maybe explain the government's regulated rate option?
Yeah, so the RRO, or the regulated rate option, is something that exists primarily for electricity, but it's also available for natural gas. And it's basically a guaranteed rate. So it's the default rate. So if you don't do anything, if you don't competitively look, If you just have power delivered to your house or to your business and you never ever look at it, you will probably be on the regulated rate option. And right now, we're seeing that option very, very high. So it's ranging somewhere between 15 and 20 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. That's an unprecedented level of price, actually. Whereas the alternative, there's many competitive energy providers out there, especially in Alberta's market. Often a fixed rate plan is much lower. And so you can see fixed rates out there on the market for typically these days, some starting somewhere around 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So it can be as much as half of what that regulated rate option is. But the regulated rate is guaranteed. It's out there. Anybody, any consumer can get that. No credit checks are required. But it definitely pays to shop around and see what else is available.
Okay, well, with that said, Trevor, maybe talk to us a little bit about the concept of utility net and ridge power.
Yeah, so UtilityNet is a Alberta company. They're based in Calgary, and they work with a number of different communities and groups like us. So the Village of Sterling formed Ridge Utilities a couple of years ago. It's a municipally owned corporation, and what we do is we market electricity, natural gas, and internet services across the province, but we're very focused in southern Alberta. And UtilityNet is the company that provides all of the infrastructure and architecture in the background to provide those services. So Ridge Utilities is one of 23 or so energy marketers in the family and working across communities all across this province.
Okay, yeah, I know when we looked on your website there, it looked like there were many community groups delivering natural gas and electricity to Alberta communities, which is kind of cool. So, what's the mission and vision of UtilityNet and your partners?
Yeah, so part of the reason we, as the Village of Sterling, formed Ridge Utilities was to provide ourselves with another source of revenue that was not tax generated. We all, as consumers, we all have to buy electricity and natural gas. We all need internet to do things. Businesses, farms, we all need to buy those utility services. And so our theory was, why don't we buy that from a community-owned local company? There are many energy companies in Alberta, for example, that are based in the United States. So we'd much rather see those profits and those jobs actually stay here in the province instead of sending money away to another province or even to another country. And so that was our primary motivation. Most of the energy marketers that work with UtilityNet, a portion or all of the profits from those companies get reinvested back into projects in local communities. So it's a way of making sure we're giving back directly to where our customers live.
That's so neat. Okay, so how have the residents of Sterling and areas around southern Alberta, like Lethbridge, responded to this new idea?
Yeah, it's really been, once people, I think, understand our motivation, it's not a tax grab. It's not we're not just trying to be a rip off consumers. This is actually a competitive alternative. Our rates are very competitive to the market, and we're helping sure that those funds are reinvested back into the local community. We've had a number of other communities join us. So, for example, the town of Raymond, the town of McGrath have joined as marketing associates of us. So they're working under the Ridge Utilities banner and essentially generating revenues for themselves and ourselves as they go through that process. But we've seen very diverse groups across Alberta. So, for example, a competitor of ours, but part of the UtilityNet family in Calgary, is a company called Sandstone Energy. And all of the proceeds from their operations get funneled back to the Calgary Public Library. So it's a way of supporting the Calgary Public Library with this energy and utility service.
Oh, that's so cool. Are people actually seeing a difference, though, on their bills per se?
Yeah, like I said, we offer very competitive rates.
Okay, okay.
When you look across all of the different energy and service providers across the province, we're buying through UtilityNet in bulk with our partners. We're buying, a hedge several months out, so we're able to make sure we get the best possible pricing. And of course, consumers should always be looking not just at the price for the commodity itself, but also those monthly administration charges that show up on your bill. Each energy marketer sets its own administration fees, so there's an opportunity to shop competitively for that as well.
Okay, yeah, good advice there. Okay, so one group like Ridge Power recently started in Pincher Creek. So how can other groups start something similar in their communities?
Yeah, so again, there's multiple ways of doing this. The first option is to become a marketing associate. So that would be, for example, like the town of Raymond is working under the Ridge Utilities banner. Rather than having to go through the work of setting up their own municipal corporation, they can do that through us and we both share in that revenue. Or if there's a community group, a not for profit, a co op, or a municipality that wants to consider setting up their own corporation, their own brand, Headwaters is the one that recently was established in Pincher Creek, for example. then they can reach out to UtilityNet. The team there is quite happy to explain the business model and see if it's a fit. It's not going to be the right solution for everyone, but it's certainly something that could be a creative solution for many groups.
Okay, so one option that customers have is the Prudential. So can you explain what this is for?
Yeah, so the way the market works in Alberta is that the generators and distributors of power, for example, the people that own the transmission lines and get it to your home, they actually get prepaid. So we have an obligation as the energy marketer to prepay what we think we're going to owe them next month. They're guaranteed that revenue essentially. And it basically protects them as the generator or distributor of energy, that if a customer defaults on their monthly bill, they're guaranteed that revenue. So we have to put up what's called a prudential or a security deposit to those companies. So what we do is we allow consumers, our customers can choose to put a security deposit or a prudential down. And that allows us to keep our rates low, because if we're not covering the full prudential ourselves, if our customers are sharing in that, we're able to offer them a more competitive rate. So we basically have two options. You can choose a slightly higher commodity rate, a slightly higher price per kilowatt hour on your electricity, for example, with no prudential, or we can offer you an even better, more competitive rate if you're willing to put down a small prudential amount.
Okay. So one thing that's been in the news quite a little bit, we're hearing a lot about carbon dioxide lately, which of course plants use as food. But can you explain what carbon offsets are, and is this carbon the same as carbon dioxide?
Yeah, so that's a great thing about working with UtilityNet. As Ridge Utilities, we're able to offer two different programs. So one, first of all, is greening your power. So you can, for a small fee on every monthly bill, decide what percentage of your power consumption you want to get from green sources. And so that allows you to buy renewable energy credits that help encourage further investment in solar and wind projects, as an example. So you can green your power consumption. You as a consumer can help support more sustainable energy by supporting that program. There's also renewable energy credits that you can get as a micro generator. So for example, I have solar panels on my home. In the village of Sterling, we're a net zero community. We have rooftop solar units as well as a ground mount array that generates enough electrical power to offset what we use. So we get paid for that, but we can also get credits for the fact that that is a renewable energy, and we can sell those credits on the open market. So it's fairly complex, but it's another way for people that have solar installations as a micro generator. They can maximize their return on investment for having that equipment on their home or their business.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. So obviously you feel that there are huge advantages to installing those on, say, one's personal homes. I know it's becoming such a huge market right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly use myself as the example. I haven't paid a power bill since February because I'm essentially generating my own revenue. And I probably will be able to get away with most of the winter not paying another bill because of the credits that I've saved up. And for our community, for the little village of Sterling, it's made a huge difference to be net zero. It actually is a revenue source for us. So rather than paying power bills, we're actually getting paid to generate power, which is an important thing for our residents. It keeps our budget pretty neutral.
That's absolutely incredible. Okay, so Trevor, if prices are dramatically increasing for residential customers who don't have solar panels, what's the situation like for our local businesses?
Yeah, I mean we're all feeling the pinch, right? So I think as individual customers in our own homes, we're seeing that impact on our bills. So I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone that the local business community is also feeling that pain. So again, I think it's important that both consumers and businesses shop the market, make sure you are doing comparisons, looking for the most competitive alternative. But then there's also an opportunity for all of us to reduce our consumption, right? So energy efficient appliances, changing to LED light bulbs instead of incandescent. There are small things that we can all do that ultimately will save consumption. And if you're not using the power, then you're not paying for it. So, there's ways that we need to, I think, be creative collectively and look for ways that we can save money together.
Okay, so Trevor, there's something called the Utility Consumer Advocate. Can you maybe explain what this is? It's available to Albertans.
Yeah, so the Utility Consumer Advocate is an organization that was established and is funded by the province. And so that organization runs a website, ucahelps.alberta.ca. And it's really there to provide objective information to consumers and customers. It's not sponsored by any one particular company. It allows you, for example, to get information of what are the charges on your bill, how do you get more information. But there's also a great cost comparison tool, so you can punch in your postal code, you can identify what kind of package or rate you're looking for. And then it'll bring up all of the competitive energy companies in Alberta that offer those services. And you can kind of see for yourself and compare those side by side. So it's a great tool. There's lots of resources on energy efficiency and how bills work, and just helps people better understand the market here in Alberta.
Absolutely. That sounds very helpful, very informative. Well, Trevor, it does look like that's all the time we have for today, but thanks so much for joining us. Lots of information there. It's been great to have you on once again.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Trevor Lewington of Ridge Utilities in Sterling, Alberta.